Welcome to a video that is for the people. And what people is that? Well, you the people. Presumably, hopefully, the people who've already watched the Fallout TV show, because otherwise this isn't going to spoil too much, because we're talking today about specifically one character, and one character who doesn't appear a huge amount within the show slash interact with anything that could constitute major spoilers. What I am getting at here is that this is going to be a short video, an anomaly for me and this channel to be sure, but I did find that there was one engaging thing at the very least that I wanted to talk about with the character of Aspirant Dane, a member of the Brotherhood, and as you might have guessed, a trans character? See, it's not necessarily so simple as that might make it seem, and within that whole statement is where we get the interesting part of this video and the analysis. Because here is the truth. There is nothing from Aspirant Dane that would make you know that they are transgender for certain. There is no blatant statement, no big monologue describing how they transitioned at a young age, and that they never felt as the gender they were assigned at birth. Though that would raise the question of who is out there assigning all these genders in the apocalypse. The doctors and hospitals are all fucking dead, as well as the record keepers. It's a literal nuclear wasteland. You can sort of really do whatever you want. And while all of that is true, as far as any canonicity, the scourge of any discussion around representation in my opinion, well, you cannot say with absolute certainty that Aspirant Dane is a trans man, or a non-binary person, or a non-binary trans man, or whatever. We don't get given that information to work with. Does that mean it isn't true? Or that it can't still be something that speaks to a trans audience who are watching? Just because the characters within Fallout don't openly say those exact terms and explain their meanings, does that mean that we have to concede to the shittier side of the fan base who refuse to accept queer people unless they are blatantly stated to be queer? Personally, I don't think that really makes sense. And in fact, that very attitude is one that is so prevalent and reveals the massive cis-straight bias that exists within media from audiences. Because look at the rest of the characters in this Fallout show. Do any of them mention at any point that they are cisgender, that they are straight? Do any of them put forward in specific statements anything which would categorize their gender identity or sexual orientation? No, they don't. And before you bring up, well, Lucy at the beginning says that she has working sexual organs. That doesn't make you cis or straight. That's it's a weird thing to get hooked up on. And yet there is no debate. There is no question. There is no issue taken with people just naturally assuming that the lack of comment from these characters indicates that they belong to the majority that the audience automatically places every single person into until told otherwise. Everybody in Fallout could be trans for all we know. It's just that Aspirant Dane is the big one who gives off trans radar shit for any people who have that active, and is played by a trans man who uses he/they pronouns, Zelia Mendes Jones. We take a leap of audience logic that it would make sense for a trans mask character to be played by a trans mask person. That's a generally pushed for idea that I have personally very heavily advocated for. I think it brings in an actor who can engage the role with their own experiences, can tell an audience stuff subconsciously by merely getting to exist on their screens in this way, and also opens the door for future trans actors to get roles in an industry that has previously been very hostile towards us, as well as giving away the jobs that should have been a good foot in for us to generally cis male actors and Scarlett Johansson. But that audience leap of logic that we are taking with Zelia Mendes-Jones and his character of Aspirant Dane, that leap of logic that will get criticized by people as us just looking for representation where there is not clearly any, that we are just taking characters rather than making our own. That exact thing can be levied at every single supposedly cis character that the cis audience makes the same leap of logic with from pretty much every show, game, movie, and book. If the creator didn't tell you they were cis, how did you know that they were for a fact? What I'm getting at here is that Aspirant Dane for me is a chance to talk about one of the things that I get told off for a lot by people who are frankly obnoxious twats, namely the exploration of characters who mess with gender in some way, narratives that explore topics about gender fluidity and identity but are not explicitly trans, and what that can mean to a community that is frequently overlooked for representation, or given representation that doesn't really offer as much of a chance to connect with it in a way that aligns with our actual lives, rather than it being a mockery of us, or just the various stereotypes and bigotries that the creator has picked up over the years of living in a society that doesn't really like trans people. When we discuss episodes that align with gender questioning stories, or characters that do stuff which become part of the triggering elements for young trans people in their own nostalgic narratives, it's never to say that a character or story is definitely transgender. That all we are talking about is what the objective truth is. Because that's really fucking boring and ignores the other half of the creative process, the audience interpretation part that is well and truly out of the hands of the creator and is where you find the most interesting elements and most engaging sociological notions. And one of those is that if a representation feels real to a person in the audience who feels it and sees it, then it is real. If you see a character as being transgender in a show or a movie, as having a narrative that seems to be evocative of gender transitioning or gender dysphoria or something like that, then yeah, that's the truth as far as you are concerned. And I can't tell you that you're wrong for feeling like that, because it's a subjective feeling. In fact, what I would love to do is watch that TV show or that movie and try and figure out exactly how that character or story ended up making you feel that way. So yeah, Aspirant Dane is not canonically trans, in the sense that nobody in the show talks about it, and none of the people involved in writing or directing the show have come out so far and said so. All we really have to work off here is the vibe that they give to people who are picking it up, and the fact that Dane is played by a trans actor. Frankly, that's good enough for me, and if you see them as trans too, then that's gonna be good enough for you. I mean, shit, some people are pretty convinced that Arcade Gannon from New Vegas is trans, and you know what? You're right, he very well could be. While it can be beneficial to have more trans characters who are blatantly trans, who give us something to directly work with, and who explore their stories on our screens, we also need trans characters who just exist the same as any cis person, whose transness is merely part of them, and not something that has to be incorporated into the plot in a greater sense. Maybe down the line we might get a season 2 Aspirant Dane focus. I mean, do you think there are like supplies of testosterone and estrogen in the hospitals that anyone can just grab? Do you think there's like transitioning stuff going on in places like the Brotherhood or the Institute or NCR? I mean, some of that would make sense. And I'd also like to see some more specifics on the Brotherhood and how they engage with Aspirant Dane. Because it's not necessarily stated anywhere that at any point the Brotherhood would be anti-trans people. Barely any of the factions have had that side of their politics explored, except for the Legion, who would not be okay with it. So I guess there is opportunity to really get your teeth into that if the showrunners wanted to. As it stands right now, All we have is a character who could be trans, in a show filled with other characters who could also be trans if you think about it hard enough. But at the very least, a trans actor got hired in a major show that is hitting it big in the ratings, and maybe opening the eyes of a few people who see them. And for that, I think we can be a little bit happy. If you liked this small video, then like, share, subscribe, comment, and check out my other stuff. I don't do these style ones very often because I like to really get into the wider narratives of a media and its universe, but after watching the show recently, I really wanted to get this off my chest, and this is my channel, so I can kind of do whatever I want. If you like what I do and want to support me in that attitude of doing whatever I want, then the best way to do that is through Patreon or here on YouTube as a member. Those in the $5 and up category should be on the screen right now, and I really appreciate all of them for allowing me the opportunity to create videos without having to worry about financial stuff or have an anxiety about the current nightmare situation for employment in New Zealand. Hint, not great for people with sociology and media studies degrees. The money on my Patreon goes towards rent, food, power, internet, cat, all the stuff that allows me to literally keep making what I am making here. Without those, the channel would be sort of fucked, to be honest. It's hardly gonna work if I haven't got a set or a me. So yeah, check out the Patreon if you want to be part of keeping things running smoothly around here. Other than all of that, thank you for watching the video, and I hope you have a great day.